apart the Mont Blanc 149 and 146 is not for the faint of heart. You'll need specific tools to be able to do this, and it should be stressed that doing so will void all warranties by Mont Blanc. However, if you are like Stephen Brown and you like living on the edge, this may be just the operation for you. What we're going to show you today is how to do it on the Mont Blanc 146, but the steps are identical to those undertaken for the 149. The tools we are using here today can be picked up from a variety of sources. Most likely you'll find them on eBay, but not all the time. So if you are looking for this kind of stuff, regularly search for a Mont Blanc disassembly tool. You'll find these things made in China or India. When disassembling the 146, first unscrew the cap and put it away for safe storage. Then, usually these tools have a feed end and a nib end, although in some cases it's a little bit different. For example, for this 149 tool, there are no actual teeth on the tool for the feed end. You're supposed to slide this in there, in that little notch, and then take it apart, which is in fact easier said than done, although it is possible, as can be seen here. When done, put the nib and feed back in place. We'll show you how to do that in more detail later. Right now we'll go on with the 146. We have this tool and we take the feed end. Note how there are two small holes on either side of the nib and feed. Two teeth will slide in there, and the first time you do this, be prepared for a difficult operation. It's very hard the first time. After a few times, it should be relatively easy to unscrew the piston unit, the nib and feed unit. Notice the nib collar, feed and nib. Nib and feed can be pulled out of the collar, but be very careful. Mont Blanc uses a very thin plastic for the fins of the feed, and as you can see, a couple of them are slightly bent. That will not really destroy your inflow, but once they start to break off, you're entering a world of pain. All of this can be flushed out, and when you're ready to assemble again, note how the feed and nib slide in place. Once you have proper alignment and everything feels like it's snug, put it back into the nib collar. Take a little bit of silicone grease and put it on those threads and around the nib collar. The first time you'll take this apart, you'll notice a nasty gooey mess around there. That is Mont Blanc silicone grease, and there are theories that they actually put that on there to see whether people have tampered with the pins. Once we have maintained the nib and feed, we move on to the actual barrel and the piston housing. Unscrew the piston all the way like this, and then take your tool. Personally, I prefer this tool. Take the teeth and slide them into the little holes on either side of the piston. It works well to gently screw the blind cap back in place to make sure the tool stays in place and has purchase. Then carefully unscrew the whole unit. Note how it consists of a couple of parts. The actual piston with the seal, silicone grease should be applied to all of these parts, both the seal and the actual piston. The piston housing unit contains the blind cap with the piston rod. If this breaks off, you're entering a world of pain. And we have the piston housing unit made of solid brass. There is a little ring there, which is actually what makes sure you get these little holes. Make sure you carefully put that back in place, and you'll see the actual holes are now closed off. Without that, they're just notches. When you're ready to assemble again, first screw the blind cap back in place Not all the way, about this will do. Take the piston, which is carefully greased up, and screw it back in place. As you can see, we can now not draw up the piston all the way. When that happens, unscrew the blind cap again. Put the piston in a bit farther, like this. Just put it in. Put it on the piston rod, like this. The piston rod is in there. Put it on there and gently screw it back in place. Now we see that the blind cap cannot be closed completely. So what you want to do is something in between those two things. So first, screw the blind cap on there just a bit. Put the piston on the rod and screw that back in place. As you can see, we're now almost there. The piston the blind cap just does not close up. So we need to go a bit further. Put the piston on the rod, and there we go. The piston retracts almost completely, and the blind cap closes securely. Unscrew it, put it back into the barrel, take out your tool, put it in through the holes, making care you're not actually getting that little ring dislodged. Screw the blind cap back in place and gently screw the barrel back in place. Don't over tighten anything, after all, precious resin may crack. Now you should have a smooth operation and a blind cap that just slides in place. Then take the nib unit, screw it back in place after having applied a little bit of silicone grease to the thread of the nib collar. Cap the pen and you're done and ready for some haggis.